Alrighty. Welcome, everybody, to Religion Zero number 18 again. Spirituality and Violence.
Part 2.
Part 2. What is that, French? I don't know.
Yeah, that's French.
Oh, yeah. De.
You can say dos if you're more into the Latin, you know?
Oh, yeah, man. Yeah, I actually grew up in, like, Hispanic culture, so I'm, like,
there you go.
a true gringo at heart, right? But, yeah, welcome to Religion Zero 18, Spirituality and Violence. Last week, as you guys saw, we had some hiccups with scheduling, and we were losing 2 out of our 4 people. And so we just decided to do that just to shoot the shit for 10 minutes and then, put it off to this week. And today is that week. Fantastic. So, as of now, you see me. I am Conk. I am currently Conk. I still am Conk. I used to be Conk. I will continue to be Conk. Up to my left or right, depending on how mirrored this is Brooke Parter. How you doing, Brooke?
I'm doing good, Corey. It's good to have be back on the show. I missed it last week because I didn't even have the 10K Run podcast last week. So I've got 2 weeks of pent up talking energy that I've got to unleash this week. So glad to be back on the show.
Yeah. I think if you just talk at double volume, maybe it'll get out faster.
Yeah.
Like putting a bigger hole in a balloon, for it to pop. All right. And then below us, we have Amos Joseph. How you doing, Amos?
Sup, everybody? Doing good.
Where are you currently, Amos? You're not at your usual location.
I am not. I'm in Nebraska right now. I'm
lame. Lame.
Yeah, I know. I'm at a. Yesterday, I attended another event for the Joe Jorgensen campaign, and then today I'm going to another one in Nebraska. So.
Oh yeah. Did you get some corn? There's a lot of corn there.
Yeah. No, nothing. I'm just hanging out. So right now I'm for respect for the other Airbnb guests, I'm out in my car.
Ooh.
It's pretty cool that you have reception in your car. I gotta say that's pretty cool.
Well, I'm connected to the Wi-Fi still, so.
Oh, in the Airbnb, you mean? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I was about to say.
Yep. Sounds like a plan. All right. So our fourth guest or our fourth talker, our guest, AbuAmerican, will be here shortly. He had a couple more errands to run, but he will be here. Pinky promise this time. He's going to run a couple minutes late here. He has the StreamYard link and all of that, so he'll be coming in when he comes in. But until then, we're going to start the show. So, spirituality and violence.
Ooh.
All right, that's all my points. What do you guys got? No, I'm kidding. So, I mean, do any of us have a background in any kind of violence thing? Police training, military training, martial arts training? Do you guys have any of that?
I mean, I'll start off by saying, well, because in Trinidad and Tobago, we don't really have much of a military institution. I wanted to join the military as a young man. I was all into, the Marines and the Special Forces and the Green Beret in the UK and stuff like that. But we didn't have anything like that in Trinidad and Tobago. I did do martial arts training, and you and I kind of touched on that beforehand, the importance of self-defense and stuff like that. When I got into that, and when I rejoined the church many years later, they kind of really went to town on me because of my, martial arts training. And I was still training. I was teaching other people at that point. Mm-hmm. And, again, because it's dragons and all Eastern culture, everything from the East is a demon. And I really got some shit for that. And I mean, obviously that's nonsense now, but yeah, that's about the extent of it. Although I did want to join the military forces.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, teaching martial arts, that's definitely heathen, right? What's next? Pokemon cards? Come on, man. Get yourself together.
It's almost as bad as yoga.
Yeah. Every time you do downward dog, you summon a demon into your home.
Doggy style.
Yeah. Amos, do you have a history of anything to do with violence or self-defense or any kind of training like that?
Oh, I'm a complete pacifist. I've never been violent in my life. No.
Is that your violence, Asian privilege?
I took a semester of Taekwondo back when I was real little. I guess it was such an accelerated program. It wasn't any official like gym that was doing it. So they said, by the end of it, they said you have the equivalent of a black belt in training, but I didn't go through any qualifications or testing.
Uh,
And they just said, this is obvious. Like I got halfway decent and tried using it in a fight a couple times. Didn't work so well.
oh yeah. Yeah. Kids class Taekwondo isn't really ready for the streets as far as I know. But hey, you never know. A boy can dream.
Yeah, if I took that same class like once I turned 18, probably a little bit more effective, but yeah, not so much.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, kids' martial arts classes in general are interesting. Like, they can still teach things like discipline and respecting others and things like that, but
yes,
usually it's all about, the wax on, wax off, teaching very, very basic stuff that probably isn't useful.
correct.
That's just from my experience. So for me, I started martial arts when I was 17, my senior year of high school. I was going to play football for my 4th year of high school, and then I just decided out of nowhere, like, to go check out a gym. And their gym, it was a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu mixed martial arts gym, and they started the same time my football practice would be after school. And I just made the decision, like, I don't really like. I liked football in the act of hitting people because I was defensive line and tackle, but that just seemed more fun to me. I never really got into the spirit of, team sports like that. And so I just decided to quit football my senior year, when I was going to be starting and all that. And I'm like, I just like this better. And so I've been doing jiu-jitsu off and on since about 2007. I move around a lot just as part of my life. So my belt isn't very high because I've had to start over like 4 times. But man, I've been a white belt with multiple stripes in multiple places, starting over a lot. So, man, do I got my basics down?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, the Brazil. This is the cultural shift, because Brazil, of course, is a very Catholic Christian country, and the Brazilian jiu-jitsu and capoeira and all these these fighting styles is really celebrated out in Brazil, just like their football as well, their soccer and stuff like that. And the first time that I ever encountered a martial artist who had some kind of religious connotation that wasn't crazy was a Brazilian jiu-jitsu artist. And he was like a full-on Christian, and he was able to merge the two worlds seamlessly. Unlike a lot of these places in the West where, anything that's, not, Bible-based and stuff like that is basically the devil. So it does help to have that international exposure. I'm grateful for that kind of thing,
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, like you said before, we lost a man.
Oh no, the Wi-Fi kicked out.
His 10-minute free trial was up.
It was expired.
You did your best, pants at half mast out of respect. Right?
F in the chats, yeah.
But yeah, I think this is a very interesting topic to me personally, because I don't know about you, Brooke, but when I was doing martial arts and I was learning, and even when I was getting my ass kicked, or if I was kicking someone else's ass, it's kind of fun.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And that's something a lot of people don't talk about. We were just talking about behind the scenes, like when we were looking up spirituality violence or Christianity violence and stuff. There's not a lot there in favor of it. It's usually a lot of things talking about pacifism, or talking about why religious wars happen, or why religion can be, a way to solve violence and abuse and things like that. But there's not a whole lot out there talking about like the relationship between spirituality and violence in a positive light.
Right.
Yeah.
And again, it's because, violence has only one connotation for a lot of people in the West. It's, it's just bloody, bludgeon, animalistic. But that's not how it has to be. It can be defensive, which is, again, something that's very positive. I would suspect, especially in the U.S., because you guys are very big on your Second Amendment and self-defense and stand your ground.
My guns. Yeah,
my guns and stuff, right? Israel is another place, right? Krav Maga is, it's huge out there. You see the teachers taking their kids out for a field trip, and they're carrying massive automatic weapons on their back, which is pretty awesome. But a lot of the Western world, post Christianity in Europe and stuff like that, they don't have any concept of this. It is a very alien thing in terms of understanding self-defense, especially in a Christian context out here. So I'm not surprised that's kind of been your result doing the research.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's interesting too, looking at like Christianity has a very violent history, right?
Yes, it does.
And so people usually never talk about it or just say, oh, well, that was back then and they were bad, but now we're good, right? Have you guys ever heard that as well? Like it always gets ignored or completely dismissed that happened, right? Oh, we know better now, right?
Yeah,
but
correct.
I think there is still like maybe not physical violence. I don't know if we would go into like emotional, mental word violence that a lot of people try to use now, but I mean, there is still a lot of hate in modern Christianity, and attacks just might be more political or verbal or movements or things like that. But from the physical side, not so much. Do you guys follow that definition of all that like words could be violent at all? Because I know that's one of the main talking points in like our postmodern SJW politics, right?
Yeah. I mean, Amos, you got a view on that? A words violence?
It really depends how you like. There are hurtful things to say, but does it actually hurt you as a person? Does it actually damage you? Well, it really depends on how you go about that. Like, I've had some people, say some pretty hurtful, damaging things to me, and I consider it like, in a way, a type of being violent and being unkind, but it would be very different if that guy came up to me and just beat me up. So it really depends, like what's being said and how it's being, how they're approaching you. Like if someone just gets real personal and just tries to, really hurt you, I think that's, in some ways, it's considered to be worse, isn't it?
I wouldn't equate that with violence. It's abusive.
Right.
Yeah.
But I'm thinking, I think this is where that line has been blurred for a lot of people, is they think abuse causing damage is no different than violence causing damage.
No, there's a big. I think there's a very big difference.
Oh, there's definitely a big difference. I get
Yeah.
that. I'm just saying, is people have started to equate that because they just think of it as what causes damage.
Well, yeah, it's a lot of the SJW talking points to try and redefine words as violence is in their attempt to justify their own violence. So if somebody is saying something that's mean or hurtful, they're basically taking that as a physical attack to justify their physical attack on the individual and in the name of self-defense. But the two are not even remotely, the same in that respect. So, I mean, I'm seeing a lot of that progressive thinking out here in Europe where, especially the Germans, for some reason, have a really tough time with this. They're very literal in their interpretations of things. I know AbuAmerican, he's out there. He could probably attest to this as well. But like literally, if something is spoken out as the law, like, I don't know, you got to stop at a red light, something completely innocuous, and you try to discuss with a German that you don't actually have to stop. If there's nobody around and it's late at night, you could kind of, you could drive through. No, in their mind, there's no separation. No, it is impossible to do that because that is the law. And it's a very bizarre mindset. Mm-hmm. Kind of reminds me of a lot of Calvinists, actually.
Yeah. By the way, you almost got me to want to start another Ted Pill rant because he has a very long section about why do we stop at red lights. But
yeah, it's the control. It's true.
Yeah. If you're in an empty road and at midnight and nobody's around, why are we stopping at a red light?
I generally don't. Just honestly.
Well, I mean, unfortunately, America's got a lot of cameras, and they'll take a picture of your license plate and mail you a ticket in some places. So,
I mean, that's been deemed. That's a whole nother topic, but that's technically unconstitutional.
How dare they?
Yeah.
Are you telling me the government doesn't follow its own rules? What is this, Amos? How could they? I mean, and I'm about to go to another anarchist rant about like why the government has a monopoly on violence, right?
Right.
Not in the U.S. I don't think that's a true thing in the U.S. at all.
What? No. Okay.
Yeah.
I will
'Cause
do
you're
60 seconds on this, but
yeah, because you're supposed to have a well-regulated militia, so the violent power is supposed to rest with the people. We're never supposed to have a standing army.
yeah, but does it happen in practice? No.
That's a good question.
Yeah.
But I mean, you got both. You got violent people defending themselves and violent governments, so it's kind of a balance, I guess.
Alrighty. Well, our guest is officially here. AbuAmerican.
What's up?
What's
welcome,
up?
Welcome.
Apologies for being late.
Oh, no problems, man. As they say, it is what it is.
Yes, indeed. Yes,
Love
indeed,
the shirt, bro.
Yeah. The wifey, man. The wifey made it. She actually produced it herself. You know, she had a little
look at that.
shop that she closed and she made it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So we've been talking about spirituality and violence.
Indeed.
One of our first questions, we'll pop it back to you.
Okay.
You have some military or police or martial arts training behind you?
Yeah, both military and martial arts.
Awesome. You want to give us a quick rundown on why you shouldn't be screwed with? How are you a human weapon?
Partially, yeah. You know, I advocate all men serving in the military. In the 21st century, with the way that things are turning in terms of like, you know, the social directions and dynamics that we're seeing in place, less so for the protection of the societies of itself, because I don't believe it's no longer worthy of male protection, unfortunately. But it is just undeniably, you will not find a better way to send tens of thousands of rounds downrange and learn how to shoot properly and learn proper combat, you know, and military tactics outside of the military, unless you have a lot of money to pay for tactical training, like, you know, movie stars do when they prep for movies. So that's the first thing about the military. In terms of like combat sports, every man should actually know how to, like, you know, use his hands, open hand, and then a weapon inside of it, be it knife, stick, whatever else. I mean, these are just things that, you know, affect and change your worldview and the way that, you know, people interact with you and the way you interact with people. And it's more passive on your part because confidence comes with that military and combat competence. And so it alters the way that people see you because it alters the way you carry yourself. You know, you command more respect passively as opposed to like guys who are out with, you know, macho bravado, you know, that really is not founded in anything. So, you know, I train personally. I trained Taekwondo for 12 years. I did Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu for 6.5, I think it was. I got up to brown belt. I need to go back to training. You know, I trained with a professional boxer for 2 years intensely. It was me, him, and another guy. So, you know, I'm very good at striking. When I'm training here in Germany, I'm actually the sparring partner for the state champions in my state, but I haven't trained in a while. So, you know, and I'm 48, you know, and I'm still in there, like, you know, giving these guys licks, you know.
Oh, yeah.
Good.
So, yeah, you know, combat, I think it's an integral part. When we look at human history, when we just look at like the way that humanity has developed in terms of like technologically, a lot of our advancements come from the military realm. It's just a reality from how we, you know, structure and build, you know, structures themselves, you know, the communications that, you know, are required, you know, fast communication, this, that, the other, transportation, aircraft. It's an integral part of who we are as a being and as a creature. So, you know, men especially, you know, in specific, should not shy away from, you know, having a martial mind and, you know, the body to go with it. Did that answer your question?
I hope so.
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah. More than enough. So we had a follow-up question to that is, when you have a background in violence, whether it be self-defense or military training or war, anything like that, how does your spiritual community, like your Islamic community, are they like proud of that? Do they not care? Are they against it? Do they think, oh, you're not supposed to be violent?
Okay, so I'm going to sort of go off track to come back on track here.
All right.
Which is basically explaining some of Islam. Now, Islam is all about the worship of Allah alone without any equals, partners, or intermediaries, right? Under the command of the messenger of Allah, who is Muhammad, peace be upon him. Now, in that, every single act of worship is to be isolated and specifically for Allah alone. Now, worship is also regulated by Muhammad. So how you pray, when you pray, the times of days, all these types of things, when you can and when you can't pray. This is specific to acts of worship. In Islam, combat is an act of worship. So it is highly regulated in the same way that the prayer would be regulated. Like you have to have a state of ritual ablution in order to pray. In the same sense, there are rules and regulations which are tied together with the act of war, or AKA jihad. Now, in the Islamic community, it's become a problem because we've had the rise of like multiple, Islamic terrorist groups. And so people have shied away from this pride of Islamic jihad. But one of the best ways to die Islamically is to die in actual combat. The shaheed, the martyr, is one of the highest in paradise, in death. It's one of the highest ways. Nobody freaks out and says, "Oh my gosh, he wants to die." When a Viking says, "To Valhalla" or whatever they say, nobody freaks out. But when a Muslim says, "Allahu Akbar," die shaheed, they're like, "Whoa, oh my God, hey, slow down, buddy." So our communities are kind of shied away from, the pride and the desire, to fight in jihad, simply because of the Islamic terrorism angle. Like back when I first had sons, back before I had sons, I made what's called dua, supplication to Allah. And I said, give me sons so that we can fight together in the cause of Allah, in jihad. And I was granted, out of my 9 children, 6 sons. This was an active thought of mine back then before this whole Islamic jihad thing like popped off. So it's there, that you should be proud of it, that you should desire it, but people are afraid of it now because, it's been kind of tainted, from these Islamic jihadi groups.
Yeah. So it's almost, would you consider it almost like supplicating to like the culture of the time? Like, oh, we don't want to get into stereotype kind of thing.
Absolutely. That's very good. And I find that problematic. I'm a person, I'm a, I don't know how to say, how do you word this? I'm an advocate of violence. That's not really right.
Yeah.
But you understand what I'm saying.
I consider myself an advocate of violence, but
it has its place. You
Yes.
can never take it out of the solution in terms of solving problems, be it on a national level, which would be the macro, or the individual level being micro. Of course, we don't want to just turn to that immediately, but
Correct.
it has to remain an option on the table.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of, it's a little bit off topic, but I'll swing it back as well. Do you guys know who the Proud Boys are?
I've heard of them. It's in a UK-based group, right?
I don't know.
Yeah,
I think
I
they're
believe-
in the States, aren't they?
Oh, no,
Yeah.
it's the United States.
Yeah,
US,
it's international
yes,
now,
US,
and it started as like a fraternity by Gavin McInnes, who's kind of like one of those
Right.
right-wing, controversial guys, kind of like Milo Yiannopoulos.
Yes.
And so he started it as a fraternity of like conservative men hanging out, but his rules to get him. So eventually it kind of turned politicized, and like now a lot of them are in jail for fights and stuff like that.
Yes.
But it started as like his own fraternity of like a men's drinking club, essentially.
Right.
But the rules to get in were you had to break the heart of a woman, you had to get your heart broken by a woman, you had to get your ass kicked, and you had to kick someone else's ass in your life. And they said those are the staples of being a man that you're allowed in the club, right?
Okay.
I thought
And
there was
so-
something about getting a felony.
Oh, yeah. Possibly, yeah. Because they had like level 1, 2, and 3, and like to stage up levels, you had to prove something, right? And so it's funny because if you look up all the media on it, it's all super negative. They're like, oh, these are horrible people. They're just trying to be violent for violence sake. But I mean, there is that violence inherited in that manhood masculinity. Even it's not saying go out and start bar fights, right? But it's like it's hard to call yourself a man or to call yourself competent if you've never actually been punched in the face. Does that make
Never been
sense?
tested.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So I don't know if you guys have felt that way similar or not, and like, do you guys get flack from that opinion if you do believe in it?
Well, believing in violence, you mean?
Yeah, that violence is or the willingness to do violence or to get beat up, like that mentality shift you get.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. We saw this in unfortunately, I think it was New Zealand with Christchurch, where there was that masjid that got like, shot up by, a bunch of crazies, and the reaction in the Islamic community was like actually quite pathetic. I made a video about it, and a lot of guys were like, oh, this, that, the other. And I was like, look, in the U.S., there was a different reaction. In the U.S., they actually hired armed security, at the masjids. And a lot of these were like armed security companies that were owned by Muslims because they felt like, hey, you know what? These guys are from our community. We know that they're going to, actually protect us thoroughly. And so you had pictures of like, Muslim guys with their kufis and whatnot, holding AR-15 standing outside the masjid on Friday prayer days. And then other people around the world, especially in Europe, in the UK and whatnot, they were like, oh, this is not the right image. This is not the right picture. This is not that, whatever. But anybody who's actually been in a fight, if you've ever been in boxing, Thomas Shelby brought something up that's correct. Strikes to the face aren't really permissible in Islam. And so boxing has generally been ruled as impermissible, but it is what it is. I'm going to train.
The reality is what it is.
But, if you've ever been a boxer, and you get into the ring with somebody and you're practicing your slips and your dodges, your blocks, your hand-eye coordination in terms of defense, you find that when the person realizes you're not throwing punches back, they turn into a freaking steamroller train and they start coming at you like mad. You're basically a punching bag. And I'm like, you need to actually, display this more than ever right now, because if you show weakness now, it's going to be impossible to claw back anything else. Now, and here's the thing. I find this to be true in the real world, just like you do in the boxing ring. The connection is just amazing. And this is something that people need to realize also, is that when you train a combat sport, what happens in the ring happens in the real world. It's just you find that in the real world, it starts off socially until it becomes physical. In the ring, it's the social passive-aggressive veneer of human interaction has been removed. Now it's just official. I can punch you in the head. So, boxing is just a shortcut to how people really are. Now, here's the thing. Did I just lose my point like an old man?
Take your time, man. Take your time.
Anyway, this what happens is if you display this weakness and you let the guy get away with hitting you and beating you up, and then the next round comes, you're like, okay, now I'm gonna start practicing my offense instead of my defense. He's still permanently in that mode of I can beat up on you, even though you're smacking this guy around the ring. Every time you get in the ring with him from there out, even though you've been knocking him around the ring like a freaking rag doll for the past 8 rounds, he gets in that ring every single time with that lack of respect that he had from the very first time you let him get away with trying to beat you up. And this is why people, when in society, you don't check them early on, they think, oh, that guy, he's a jerk. He's a a-hole, this, that, the other, because you've taken back that playroom that you gave them early on. It's the same thing in the boxing ring. So early on, you got to smack that dude in the teeth and let him know, hey, this is where it's at, So, in regards to the point, I think I'm somewhere.
Yeah, the mindset shift of like learning to actually fight, right? Or be in a fight. Yeah.
Standing your ground, not backing down. And you're right in terms of where society is right now and the push of the very progressive ideologies and trying to redefine society, even words. We were having a discussion earlier. You have to stand up. Because as you say, the minute you capitulate to any of these people an inch, they're never satisfied.
You see that with SJWs.
Yeah, they won once. They figure they're going to win again and again and again.
You say sorry, and they will eat you alive.
Never apologize.
Never
apologize. No, I agree with you.
Exactly. I think also with that mindset thing of like, getting hit in the face for the first time is also like a huge reality check for how the world actually works, right? Because most people, they grow up watching movies and TV shows of like superheroes or kung fu movies, and they think like that's how it is. That's what a fight is, right?
Yeah.
And so they start getting those delusions in their head, like, well, if someone came at me, I would do, a crane kick and trip them, and I would just do this. But as soon as you get punched in the face, you realize it is just a movie or a TV show that I built my whole hypothetical fight on, right?
Yeah.
That stuff doesn't work. Fighting is pretty damn gritty, at the end of the day.
It is.
It's not as smooth and cool as TV wants you to believe, right?
Yeah, Ip Man, Ip Man and everybody.
20 men. I was raised on all of those kung fu movies, and entertaining as hell, man. But yeah, the first time I actually got like a punch in the face, and I took it pretty good actually. I was like, "Is that all?" And I was like, "Oh yeah, I could do this."
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I remember
go ahead,
very. Oh, sorry. Yeah, I remember very clearly the first time I got punched in the face, and it was 6th grade. So I was a bully in elementary and middle school. Actually, I was kind of like the giant asshole, right? And so I was in with my own nerd crowd. You know, I was kind of leader of my own nerd crowd, but I also had like the social repertoire to be like hanging out with the cool kids and the bad kids, you know, and the bullies as well. So I kind of had both of those. And I tried to justify it myself saying like, oh, I'm going to protect my nerd friends from them. I'm going to tell them they're cool, but I also got to help them mess with the other cliques. Right. So, I remember in 6th grade, I was hassling a kid for literally no reason. I don't remember why. It was just because. And he just like I wasn't even shoving him. I was just insulting him while he was walking home. And he just turned around and straight hooked to my temple in 6th grade. And I fell down and like I don't even remember what happened. And I realized like, okay, this isn't even that bad, right? And so I was already just a giant kid. Like I grew up, I was born, you know, like 50 pounds. I was like born a mammoth, right? And so I'm used to just being big all the right, you know, and that takes you really far as a kid because nobody knows any better, right? But the first time I got hit in the face, I was like, wow, that wasn't that bad, right? Yeah. I don't know if you guys have had that similar feeling, but like from there I realized like this is almost kind of fun. And then I kind of way backed off it in high school. And I was way more passive in high school, trying to be the good Christian boy. But yeah, my middle school days were no holds barred kid fights for like a while. And so yeah, it's weird because I look at it both bad and good. You know what I mean? I'm glad I got that out of my system and I learned that at early on, because how many people are in their 20s, even 30s right now who have never actually been in physical contact? Right.
I was just talking to a homie about this today. It's like, you know, some guys are starting like really late in the game. You know, they're in their late to mid 40s, and it's not. I think we both agreed that, you know, it's never too late to start, but it's like you're seriously behind the power curve. You know, because now you have to imagine if you're starting at like 40s or in your mid 40s, and someone like me who's been fighting since I was like 16. Yeah, I've got a world of experience that you're never going to catch up to. It's impossible. You're not going to catch up. You know, you could quit work and then only train, and I just got the experience advantage on you. So it's like, it's really, you know, that it is a blessing to be able to, you know, say that, you know, you started fighting at an early age.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
I agree.
Don't say that in front of Karen, though.
Yeah, violence is bad.
Exactly.
Just in general, you know. So tying it back into spirituality, like we were talking about, you know, just now, that there's that mind shift change once you actually do get an actual physical altercation, right? Do you guys feel like either from like a masculinity aspect or a spirituality aspect, how do you think that like ties into that, right? Do you see like violence as an innately like spiritual masculine thing?
Yes. And I'll explain why, actually, from an Islamic standpoint, that I understand it to be from. When Allah created Adam, you know, we call him father of mankind, Adam alayhi salam. I can't remember if this is a hadith or if this is in the Quran. I'm getting old. Allah told Jibril, the angel Jibril, he said, go and look at what I've created. And Jibril went to him and he looked at him, and when he returned, he says, Ya Allah, he said, which means, oh Allah, did you create one who will shed blood on the earth? So immediately Jibril saw the violent nature of man, you know, and his first question to Allah, the angels, was, did you create one who would, you know, who would spread blood, you know, bloodshed on the earth? He knew they knew, and they recognized that they would be a very, you know, violent species. And what are we? We're very violent. Demonstrably violent. You know, we found ways to kill millions at one time with like bombs now, you know, nuclear bombs and whatnot. This is what we do. So it is clearly a very prominent aspect of our makeup and our nature, because and it's the beauty of like the Quran. They could have come and asked, did you not create, or why did you create one who, you know, is going to bake cakes or cookies or whatever? You know, they didn't come and ask anything else except why did you create one who's going to shed blood on earth? This was the first thing they asked him. They didn't ask him about, if they're going to be obedient to God, if they're going to worship him properly, if they're going to honor him properly. No, he's going to be violent. So it's an inane part of our personality and our makeup that we shouldn't deny. But the beauty also is that it has, like I said, been regulated. It's just like our desire for women. And I'm not trying to, I'll tie this in there, this is what I'm known for. Men have an inane desire for women. I mean, it's like we're like dogs and food. You put food in front of a dog, he's going to eat. You put a woman in front of a guy, he's going to smash. But it's been regulated, And so there's limits and there's rules, there's regulations that have been put in place to prevent you from going too far and out of bounds. Because a man can go into what we know is called bloodlust. He can come to a point where something snaps inside and he just goes nuts. And these rules and these regulations are there to limit part of our nature that, although can be positive, can also be negative. Just like womanizing can, womanizing, yes, it can have its positive nature, positive side. But if you go too far, it becomes negative,
Yes.
And just like violence, it's the same thing. So it's an inane part of our personality and our makeup. And I don't think people should shy away from it. It should be something that you embrace with the rules and the regulations that come with it. And those rules, again, like I said, are very stringent. You just can't do whatever you want, however you want, even when someone breaks in your house. I mean, I was just listening to an audio recently about this and like the rules of how you deal with an aggressor inside of your home who's unwelcomed, so, and you're allowed to beat him up. You're not allowed to like subdue him and then kill him. If he runs away, you're not allowed to pursue him. I didn't even know. This is something I didn't know until last week. You can beat him up, and if he runs, that's it. You can't shoot him in the back. You can't chase him down the block. You let him go, and you call the police and the authorities, to deal with him. So there's a lot of rules and regulations that even I'm still learning to this day. Because I'm going to get my crossbow. I'm going to shoot you in the back. You run out. But okay, fine. I found out you can't do that,
Exactly.
So, yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, in regards to the rules and regulating yourself with it, I think actually in the Gospels in the Bible, I think it's very similar there as well, where there's a couple times where Jesus says, go buy swords or go bring swords, but then he also rebuked Peter when he used it incorrectly, right? He chopped off the ear of a guard when Jesus was getting arrested, but Jesus told him, bad timing, bro, right? This was supposed to happen, and he told him like 3 or 4 times in advance earlier in the book, like, hey man, I'm gonna get arrested and tried, it's cool, just let it happen. And Peter's like, no, and then he tries to fight back, and she's like, that's a bad idea. But Jesus did tell him to bring the sword in the first place as well, right? It wasn't some secret sword. Jesus told him to actually go out and get that and bring it with just in case. So yeah, I definitely understand that, and that the bloodlust aspect you're talking about before is very interesting as well, because that's something like our one of our good friends of the show, Thor, down in the chat, he was talking about, that he considers himself a modern day Viking, and if there was a modern day Viking, it is Thor.
Agreed.
It's true.
And berserkers.
The Viking and the pagan religions, they actually, that's what I was gonna say. They actually like thought bloodlust is like awesome, and they considered that a divine occupation in itself, right?
Yeah, the berserkers. Yeah, I mean, the Vikings have, as you say, as we were talking about, Valhalla. The story of the end of days with Ragnarok. It was the greatest fighters that made it to the halls of Valhalla, and it was seen upon they would rise up and they'd fight in the Ragnarok and stuff. So again, it's a culture that definitely embraced this violent nature within humanity and so forth. So yeah, Thor, I very much share a lot of your story. I think you're awesome, man. Thanks for tuning in. But I completely agree that, look, I mean, violence is going to be the ultimate solution to everything. At the end of the day, it is the golden law. It is whoever has the biggest stick in terms of a country, or who can wield the power the most. Now, ultimately, yes, that is the last resort. We don't go there. We have the rule of law, which has kind of saved us from, the tribal, dominance and other things. But at the end of the day, that is the backstop. It's going to be violence.
Yeah, absolutely.
And unfortunately, especially within the realms of Christianity and even other religions, Buddhism and a couple others I could list off, they've taken a pacifist position of like absolutely no violence. They wouldn't even kill an insect kind of thing. It's like some people would just not go that way. I think that's counterintuitive. I don't think that type of philosophy is really going to advance humanity in any kind of capacity.
No.
I can't speak for, all of these religions and stuff like that, but I definitely share, Abu, I share your sentiment about this is something innate. And Corey, you too, I think, even within the scriptures and in both Islam and Christianity, I think there are guided rules as to how this should be implemented righteously. Doesn't mean we're going to get it right all the time.
No, obviously not.
And especially with your experience. I'm in the UK. We do not have self-defense laws in the UK.
Yeah, it's a mess over
right?
there.
Yeah, it's the same kind of nonsense that you're talking about. Like, you have to do proportional force. So if somebody comes at me with a knife, I can't pull up a gun to defend them because that's excessive force. So it's all of those.
So you just got a knife fight with the guy, and I know if he's an expert or not. I just, hey, let's go.
If he comes with a knife, I have to come with a knife. If not, I'm going to be arrested. I mean, it's insanity, absolute insanity out here. And I mean, that's probably why I may not stay in this country for too much longer.
Just throw on the Star Wars, the old Star Trek, with James Kirk,
Yeah.
Just throw that song on, get your knife out. He got his knife,
Seriously, they really do it. Any kind, and if you get the advantage, if the guy's knocked out, like you say, if he's passed out and stuff like that, and I do anything else, like I bind him or anything like that, and he gets scars or whatever, that's excessive. He was already incapacitated. I shouldn't have had to do anything. Call the police. Just insane. It's when a civilization is so old, the courts are bored, they just come up with shit to make things complicated. That's what's going on in the UK. So
Yeah,
it's terrible, man. It's absolutely ridiculous.
it really is.
Yeah. So I wonder, how did we get there from, oh, did I get cut out? I don't know. It sounded like my audio got out for a second. Okay. So I'm trying to figure out how we got there from so many of our religions were like had violence and had its own regulation and rules saying like, it's not evil. It's about how you use it and your timing and your wisdom in this scenario to like all spirituality now is supposed to be pacifist, right? I think that's the majority answer, right? So I'm trying to figure out, how did we get there? What do you guys think?
My humble opinion, you guys know what I'm going to say. It's the feminine imperative. Lack of violence serves only one group. Or two groups, women and children. Well, three, women, children, and old people who are probably incapable of fighting. It doesn't really serve anybody else. In terms
I think
of the tribe,
they perceive it'll help them, but it doesn't.
Yeah,
right?
they perceive it, yeah. But I mean, it's like when you don't have power, when you don't have strength. I was having this conversation again, repeating this again today. I was having this conversation today. A guy was redefining the terminology of alpha. And in this, he took violence and the capacity to violence out of that definition. He literally was like, oh, that's so old school and that's outdated and this, that, the other. It's simply because he didn't fit inside of it. Yes. And so people who cannot fit inside the realm of combat and war, who cannot make that a part of their personality or their character, both physically and psychologically, what do? They war against it in the way that they can socially. Correct. And they try and eliminate that. Oh, you're just a barbarian savage. Okay, well, maybe I am. But you know what? If I knock you over the head and bury you in a ditch, I guess I'm just the status quo now, ain't I? Because your ideas, you can't defend them. If you can't defend your ideas, are they yours? If I can come over and he's, well, you're a savage. Well, I got this big sword here. And if I hack you in the head with it, are you going to agree with me? Oh, yeah, you know what? You're actually right, AbuAmerican. Yeah, I thought so. What are your ideas if you can't defend them? If you're not ready to? So when it comes down to it, women who are, generally incapable of actually, defending themselves, old people and the weak. And this is what we find are running society today. Women, weak, the incapable, whether physically or psychologically or both. People who are unwilling to prepare. Even if you don't, just be prepared. I'm not saying go out and fight and, hack your neighbor to pieces, but geez, be ready in case he flips out. Well, you don't know if he's a psychopath, sociopath, if he wants your toilet paper in the next Rona outbreak, you don't know what's going to happen. Be prepared. But those people are the ones that are out saying, no violence, this, that, the other. Women, obviously, they want that more than anyone else. This is something I expect from women. So that's my take on why we're here. I'd like to hear somebody else.
No. We've lost him. He's got the link. He could jump back in.
Yeah. Well, what do you guys take? Amos, do you have an idea of like where that came from, where we moved from Violence is
Oh,
okay if regulated to complete pacifism.
It just came out of nowhere. I mean, you can't predict. No, I'm just kidding. I
Way
think
out
it's
of left
just-
field. Way.
Yeah. It's a fascination. I think with not fascination. We've basically we think because we're these evolved, enlightened humans, and we don't require violence.
Welcome back,
know,
bro.
we think because we don't need violence, we think, oh, then there should be no violence whatsoever. It's sort of like I don't know, like just the hubris of thinking, we're in this point in society where violence is so not commonplace that therefore violence has no place. But then as a result of that, words become violence somehow.
Yeah, I think that's kind of like the downside of like if your value is progress, right? Progress, and it's almost progress for progress sake. It's almost all based on right now and reactionary, right? So people look at right now and what can solve right now? Oh, violence is bad, but they don't go back and look at like the foundation of like how we got here in the first place was having very strong military and defense and borders and all these things that let us become a country in the first place that we could even talk about it, right?
Right. No one really understands the historical significance of sort of just violence, conquest, wars.
Far too removed it today.
Yeah.
What's that?
I said society's far too removed of what it took to actually make the society we live in.
Exactly. And it's now, is it to glorify and say, oh, violence is great and we should just be continuing, with conquering and wars and such? No, not. I mean, it's not. Doesn't mean that at all. It just means you need to have a broader perspective to understand, and it there's a lot of horrible stuff that we would not even think about that happened in the past, but those things inevitably contributed to the society we have today. I mean, you look at civilization outside your window. You got buildings, you've got infrastructure, and there's a whole lot of, violence against, people want to say violence against the earth to extract, resources and minerals. There's violence against people that result in, having space that you can live in, establishing that order. No one wants to, if you really think about it, that's all true, but no one wants to acknowledge that. They think, oh, we need to go back, sort of dial it back to the time before violence and conquest was so crazy, was all over the place. And we would we take our enlightenment and sort of peaceful attitude back to that time, and it will be in a better place. No, you need violence, you need these things in order for society to exist today. So that now, while violence still happens, is nowhere near the level that it was back in our more savage times.
Yeah, there's actually so you guys know who Donald Glover is? He's Childish Gambino, the rapper, but he also has done comedy and TV shows as well. Yeah. He used to actually have a stand-up bit that was pretty funny and actually pretty true and relevant to this, where he said I would never want to go back in time because, and people talk about, oh, everybody today is all dangerous and scary. He's like, no, it's way more dangerous and scary back then.
Absolutely.
And he would be like, you would be waking up in the middle of the night to a group of bandits, trying to kill and rape your family. And he'd go, well, what'd you expect? It was nighttime. Well, it just happens.
I mean, to comment, just to add my 2 cents on that perspective. Yes, I love what Amos just said about, everybody thinks, oh yeah, the earth is so nice and peaceful and all this kind of stuff. And, if we all just go back to solar power no, the earth is trying to fucking kill us, man. It is a violent climate. Now we have tamed it with our technology, and that's we now have the cities and the habitat and all this kind of stuff. But no, we were dying in AMOS, in our early caveman days or whatever the case might be. Even a lot of the conquests and stuff like that is fighting for resources. You know, our technology has freed us a lot from a lot of that need for, limited food and resources and these other types of things. So I completely agree. It's part of our history, and the Enlightenment is fantastic, but it doesn't change the human nature. So to get back to the point that you were talking about, Conk, it is a Gnostic thinking in a lot of religions where the idea of the body, like the physical body, is considered evil. And a lot of spirituality and religion tries to emphasize an escape from the body. So you go to higher ideals, you go to the spiritual plane of existence, if it's nirvana or whatever the case might be, where there is no lack, because everything in the spirit is perfect, and you try to impose that on your reality. That's not real, right? That separation is not a reality. In fact, the whole point of the Christian incarnation I mean, Abu, we may disagree on this, but the incarnation of God into a human body in the person of Christ debunks that. The separation between physical and spiritual in that respect is destroyed. In fact, the physical is very important. And that's where a lot of people get caught up. A lot of modern Christians, a lot of the Hindus, the Buddhists as well, Taoists, they have this idea of trying to escape the body. But no, the physical body and accepting your humanity, as well as, whatever your faith tradition might be. But it starts with accepting yourself. You can't have any victory if you're fighting your body, right? That's just a losing battle at the end of the day. But people think that's some kind of higher form of spirituality. You go to the gurus, you go to the yogis, and it's all about self-flagellation and fasting and veganism and all of these different types of things. But you're not embracing your humanity. And that includes the prospect of violence. A lot of these religions just have no place for it. And I think that's where they fall short.
Yeah, spirituality is all well and good. I mean, but at the end of the day, spirituality is always combined together and it's tied together with, your physical plane, because we live in a physical plane,
I agree.
And so that's why, like I was saying, with Islam, jihad is part of our worship. Worship is spirituality.
Correct.
So it combines the two, the physical and the spiritual world. This is a physical act that you are going to be faced with at some point in your life. In general, almost everyone, you're really a blessed person if you haven't experienced any sort of violence in your life. I mean, it's really, well, I don't know if you're blessed, but you're definitely sheltered.
It's rare,
Yeah, it's like an innate ignorance, right?
Yeah.
And I was talking about before, the people who've never gotten in a fight and they have those weird fantasies about how they think a fight would go until they actually get in the environment and realize, like, this is the ultimate reality check, right? That I've been living with these weird idealistic, fake ideas of how the world works until it literally slaps you in the face, right?
Yeah.
It's kind of like when you see those, I saw a video, I don't know if you guys have seen this, it was like a group of Antifa protesters, and
I was going to say this.
Did you see the tourniquet?
Which one?
So there's this video of this guy, he got hit with a rubber bullet in his leg.
Okay.
And it definitely, it split some skin, but he wasn't bleeding out. He wasn't it just, you could see red, but there was not really a lot of blood.
Right.
So it's essentially just like the worst paintball injury, right?
Yeah.
Some bruising,
some high-end paintball action. Yeah.
Basically, proper, you bandage it and then just, take it easy for a few days and you'll be fine. But because it's such, this is the thing is, this violence against a lot of these violent protesters is being so blown out of proportion is because the majority of these people have never experienced violence.
Correct.
So you got these guys. So again, back to the guy that got hit in the leg with a rubber bullet. They were freaking out. There was 6 or 7 guys around him, and one of them tried to put a tourniquet on his leg. It's like, dude, he didn't get shot in the leg. He just, it just grazed him. Because his pants took the brunt of the blow, which is why he's fine. But yeah, they were freaking out, like he was dying. There was some guy just rips off his belt and starts making a tourniquet. I'm thinking, what are you doing? No
tourniquet for something that needs a Band-Aid.
Yeah, some ointment.
Yeah. They don't have this proper understanding of violence. And I think I've heard of I've seen videos and you'll notice when you see like a full-grown adult get punched in the face for the first time, you'll kind of some people say they'll see it. Like the guy will kind of like pause for a sec. It's kind of like almost like a cartoon when they're like kind of that split second when everything kind of goes standstill, then they fall over. It's kind of like that with people that get hit for the first time as adults. Is they're like, for that 1 second before they go down, they're like, "Holy crap, this is what a punch is like," and then they fall down.
Yeah.
You guys have seen that, right? Just that startling look, like,
Yeah.
oh,
Yeah, like this is really happening.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
yeah. And so, and this is kind of the problem is you've got this misunderstanding of what is violence, and also just sort of a lack of appreciation for it. Like an appreciation to understand it, like when you're on the receiving end, but also an understanding of when to and when not to use it. You know, so you've got these guys who've never been punched in the face, never got in a fight, throwing bike locks at people's heads. You know, they're throwing M80s into crowds and stuff. They're trying to mob vehicles in the streets and stuff, and they're only like dishing out violence with no appreciation for the damage that they're causing to people.
Yeah.
Like if you've gotten properly beaten up, you're probably going to think twice before. It's kind of like, you know, getting hit with a taser before you are given a taser to use. They want you to know what it's like.
You get tased, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So they're like, hey, you know, here's how it feels. So don't go around just shooting random people with it.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I actually signed up for that in college. They were doing police testing, and you got to volunteer to get tased and pepper sprayed and get attacked by a dog wearing the bite sleeve. And I signed up for that for fun. I wish, yeah. I would have been the man now. But no, yeah, I signed up for those, and they're pretty eye-opening, right? You know, it's one of those things where you see it on TV, but until you actually get attacked by a canine German Shepherd, right? It's a very different feeling. Yeah.
I was gonna say, I don't know if Thor is still watching and stuff like that. There is actually in the Poetic Eddas, which is where we get a lot of the poetry and the mythology behind the Norse mythology. There is a point that is made a couple times throughout it, and we all think of the Vikings as these savage warriors and all this kind of thing. But there's actually a couple passages where it says, look, it's never too good to be too wise. It's, just be a little bit wise. Because if you're too wise, being like you think you know it all, and you end up in the battle, suddenly you discover there's no bravest man. And I thought it was such an iconic thing, a society that actually, esteemed violence and esteemed the battle and the path to Valhalla, kind of realized all of that bravado, like what Amos is talking about, the SJWs and the Antifas and these others who are pumping up themselves to be something. When it actually comes to the reality of violence and the reality of the confrontation, you realize these people really don't have what it is. And I think there are very few people that look forward to the violence. Most people kind of approach it reluctantly, but it is a reality that we all have to face. And even in the Viking culture, they have that as an understanding that this is a necessary evil. Nobody's really looking forward to it, sort of
the
thing.
Guy that's going to get the most kills on that battlefield, that becomes the hero, of the tribe or whatever. He's not. People will say he's brave and he's all this, but I don't think I've ever heard anyone say, "Oh, I go into the battlefield completely fearless."
I know a couple, but they're crazy.
Yeah.
Like, they got mental issues.
They shouldn't be, but they are. Yeah.
Yeah, they're complete psychopaths. I completely could see there are those type of people out there, but generally speaking,
at that point, like it's just ignorant of sort of reality. At that point, like you can appear fearless, fully aware of how deadly of a situation you're in.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just
you may not know the severity of it. Sure.
What's that?
Yeah, you may not go into a situation with understanding the severity of it. Yeah, I completely get that.
Yeah, so it's like you can appear fearless just because you're better at handling the fear of like, okay, there's people wanting to kill me from every angle coming at me. I just have to confront them one at a time and get through this. I have to fight. So it's like violence is not ideal, but it's necessary. So it's like you got to kind of work with that and realize that balance between, I'm not someone that's going to go around and just starting fights and wanting to kill people. But if push comes to shove, I have to do what I have to do. And I might not be the, so to speak, bravest guy, but I have to be the best at surviving. And that might come across as being fearless, when in reality you're being, scared shitless. I think, like, what is it? The whole, like, wear your brown pants that day so they don't know you're shitting your pants.
Yeah, it's the phrase that, bravery is not the absence of fear, but it's to do what you have to do despite the fear, kind of thing. It's to overcome the fear.
Right.
Yeah, I completely agree. We're another man down.
Yeah, I think he's on his way back in. It looks like it's loading.
Oh,
there we go.
Sorry about that, guys. I don't know what's going on with this thing. It just sort of pop out all of a sudden. It's weird.
Yeah, but what you're saying, Amos, and they're also going back to that whole like Antifa or like that unguided thing. There's kind of like that the lack of respect for conflict, right? Yeah, they're like, at the end of the day, there's got to be some form of mutual respect involved in that time, right?
You know what? Talking about this, and this is the common denominator in what you guys are talking about in terms of Antifa and these guys who are fearless in going into combat. The issue is, generally, it goes back to what you guys are saying about an inexperience with violence in general. And this is because an individual who thinks like this is an individual who only thinks about what he's going to do to his opponent, not what his opponent is going to do to him in return. Exactly. And so this is generally a person who, like you said, Conk, has no respect for combat sports or combat itself because he's never experienced it. And if he has experienced it, then he's definitely along the spectrum of psycho/sociopath, because I don't know if you guys ever read the psychopath test. Psychopaths have no connection between, like, reward, punishment, pain, this type of stuff. They don't connect it whatsoever. Burn your hand? Nah, let's just go back for some more. They don't think like, let me avoid this again. So experiencing pain and discomfort or whatever, getting beat down to a pulp, and then thinking like, maybe I should rethink this in a different way the next time. They don't register that. It's a literal broken mechanism inside of their head. So, I mean, it's physiological in psychopaths. It's sociological breaking that took place for sociopaths, so... Yes. This is what you find that's going on with Antifa and all that stuff. Yeah.
And like going to the idea of respect, one of the things I think about, and Abu, I think for sure you would understand this, but like the higher, so like when you're in a martial arts dojo or a gym or things like that, or training for combat sports, usually you get the hotheads that come in, you know what I mean? Yeah. And they'll do it for like a month or two, and then they just think they're the hot shit, right? And they want to go around and act tough. But if you look at the black belts and the elders of that gym, they probably get in the least amount of fights out of anybody, right? Yep. They're the most competent, and they also understand, you don't just go around choking people out because you just learned to choke today, right? Yeah. And so it's funny that usually the calmest, most stoic people in the gym are the people that have been there the longest. Yeah.
Correct.
And I think it's because they respect the conflict, right?
Absolutely.
I was going to touch on that. That is the great thing that came out of the UFC, the Ultimate Fighting Championships. I mean, I was around when the early days of that, when it was first advertised, and it was kind of like, let's see what martial arts style is the best.
Just bleed.
Yeah, exactly. The karate guy, the taekwondo, sumo, all this kind of stuff. And we learned pretty quick that a lot of that stuff is just bullshit. A lot of that stuff doesn't work. Yeah, and
it only works in its own little, ecology, right?
Correct. Yes. In the dojo setting and stuff like that, sure, absolutely. And that's why jiu-jitsu kind of rose to the top. We were talking about Brazilian jiu-jitsu early on. That kind of rose to the top. And that's true. Most fights end on the ground. If you can grapple and you can, you could get your stance and strength on the ground, you're probably ahead of most of the people out there anyway.
Absolutely.
But yeah, all of that fluff was put to the test. And I absolutely, it's changed the martial arts world entirely. And I'm sure, Abu, for you and your men's community, jiu-jitsu is probably a pretty promoted thing.
I tell everybody they need to do some sort of training. I don't care if you do catch wrestling. I don't care if you do jiu-jitsu. Catch wrestling I have a lot of respect for. Yeah. Do this Russian style. What is it called? The
Russian one. I don't know.
Sambo.
Yeah, I don't care what it is. Sambo, jiu-jitsu, catch wrestling. Just make sure you have a grappling art to go together with striking. I mean, yes. I'm a strong advocate of it, Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, combat sports are, I just, and this brings us back to like, the earlier topic, spirituality, everything. Also, it's just like, how are you going to have in your circle of men
Yes.
people? And I talk about this. I don't know if any of you guys read my book. No, it's not one of you guys. It was actually, what's his name? Dranor, I think he was. He read my book. You can't have in your circle of men who are untrained in the arts of combat. He's an untested, he's an untried man. Anybody who's actually shot weapons, one of the first things you want to do before you go on to like the field of combat or you go get deployed is you check your weapon.
Yes.
Is the barrel stuck? Is the firing pin in there? Is it working properly? Is your safety working? Can you turn it off when you need to? Can you turn it on when you need to? You need to check your weapon. An untested weapon is basically going into combat with suicide. If it works, awesome. But it's like Russian roulette with your life.
Yeah, you're rolling dice.
Yeah. Having men in your circle who don't train is basically Russian roulette with your life, because you don't know what's going to happen when, and if something pops off, and I talk about it in my book, The Mad Monkey, because it's all about violence. Just sometimes a situation pops up and you're like, you don't even know why you're fighting. All you know is I'm here with my tribe and we need to get out of this safe.
Correct.
And so now, if you're not part of us, you're going down. And if you got a guy over the corner, oh my God, we had this guy Yasser. I wrote about him in the book. He was like a Chihuahua. He'd go around barking and like yapping in a room full of pit bulls, and he'd start trouble, and he'd get himself knocked out every single time he'd get knocked out. And eventually it's just like, look, man, you gotta go, dude. You know what I mean? It's like, not only do you start trouble, you can't even help us when the trouble starts. You can't have that in your circle. You can't. It's suicide. And especially in the day and age of, especially if you're in America or something, okay, here in Germany, I'm relatively safe. But if you're driving down the street with your homies and Antifa pops up or whatever else, what are you going to do with those nut jobs? Yeah, well, no, I'm actually a black man who likes Trump. Okay. All right. Me and my tribe are going to knock you guys out, and I'm still going to like Trump. I'm not going to change my opinion just because you're out here, waving your little sticks with your mask on, So.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. I mean, we could probably, because we got about 20 minutes left. We should maybe touch on guns at this point. I think,
okay.
I think that's something we could probably. You guys have to kind of fill it in, because I'm in the UK. We can't even have a steak knife without showing our ID, so it's pretty ridiculous.
Oh my gosh! Yeah.
Oh man.
Wow.
It's
Yeah.
like, would
go ahead.
Jesus own an AK?
I think
Sure.
he would. I believe he
Hell
would.
yeah.
I believe he would.
Yeah, I mean, he
I'm
told
with
he told his people before they go on a missionary journey, go buy some swords, right? Guns are just modern swords, right? Swords were the cream of the crop of the weapons of the time, right?
Yeah.
So
The beauty of the gun is it's the great equalizer of the 21st century. Yeah,
Agreed.
I'm a 6'3", 200+ pound guy. I lift weights. I fight. This, that, the other. And a woman that's like 95 pounds with a gun is we're not even equals. She's got
Correct.
superiority on this. It's the great equalizer of the 21st century in terms of like personal protection. That can go both ways, of course. It can give, like in the UK, criminals an advantage for people who obey the law and actually don't go out and get weapons in a criminal sense. But criminals who obviously are criminal and don't care about law,
Exactly.
it gives them an advantage over others. But I think guns are an absolute necessity. I think they should be widespread. In Texas, we don't have a big problem. I'm a Texas resident. We don't have a big problem with bank robberies. It's an open carry state. You can go in a bank carrying a gun. You're going to come in there with 8 people and grandma got an open carry, and try and rob the bank. Mr. Outgunned now, you're sitting there looking at like, 9 people in line with guns and then 2 security guards, and you're in here with your 3 homies trying to rob the place. Dude, you really think that's going to go down?
I mean,
No.
if you want to talk about like the true, everyone wants to talk about equality and egalitarianism, and I think the true agent of egalitarianism in the 21st century, it has to be the gun.
mm-hmm.
Like, and no one wants to admit that. They think, it's better legislation, it's anti-discrimination. It's forcing diversity quotas or gender quotas and all this, but really the true equalizer in society is, you think about all these different things that no one really wants to talk about with, okay, so, they want to talk about how, like, women or just certain vulnerable people can't go out at night, and, well, there's certain opportunities that are available at night, like a night job or whatever else, and there's all these ways that the vulnerable, the marginalized, and just people in general can be able to operate in society just because they have a means to protect themselves.
Yep.
in a world that is supposedly so free from violence, there's still some violence. So in order to operate to kind of mitigate that last little bit of equality that everyone praises, get a gun.
You won't find me
You
disagreeing.
want to go out there and work. You want to go out there and work, be in the world, and you're not a man. You're not an able-bodied man that can protect himself or just be able to walk through the world. Then get a gun.
Mm-hmm.
You're not. That is going to do way more wonders for you than to go out and do marches and protests and all the money that goes into lobbying, and now you gotta go do all this. You gotta news things. No, just get a gun. It's way cheaper.
I mean, you could do both, of course, but yeah.
Right. But I think just in terms of kind of just in a bit of a side topic, but not to get too into that. But when you look at actions that you can take in order to improve mental health, a lot of people talk about that. One of the clear ways of improvement that is just foolproof is diet and exercise. Sure. Everyone wants to go on medication. They want to go do counseling, all this stuff. Change your lifestyle, diet and exercise. More often than not, will actually see huge improvements in your mental health, just overall mental well-being. No one wants to talk about that. They just want, I just want pills. I want this. Pills and counseling is basically complaining on TV about men, having rights and, writing feminist posts on Facebook. You feel like you're doing something, but you're probably not.
You make a good point. The problem is that having and owning weapons requires action, and people want passive solutions to where they don't have to do a lot. Correct. If you get a gun, you have to learn how to use it. You have to be responsible with it. And then eventually, if something happens, and 9 times out of 10 it's not, you have to have the on the moment ability to decide what's right and wrong and take action.
Correct.
And when it comes down to having a gun, that can be severe. Absolutely. You pull out a gun, the moment you put your hand on it, that means I'm ready to take action. You don't pull that thing out, just because you want to brandish it and start waving it around hey, I'm a cowboy, no. So, and people don't want that. That's too much responsibility. Legislate it. Put that in the hands of the government. Let them deal with that. People are afraid of responsibility in general. And the more they can abdicate, the more they'll take it. But what they seem to forget is when you do that, you're abdicating your own freedom.
Correct.
And, in general, even though there are restrictions in religion, I've never found a religion, not one that, I respect, that asks a person to abdicate his personal freedom, There are restrictions in their rules, but there's nothing that says hey, don't go out and live your life or whatever else, or, be able to make decisions and this, that. Rather, they give you a guideline to make responsible decisions on your own as an individual. And society doesn't want that. It's one of the reasons why they war against religion so bad, Correct. Because morality requires you to sit there and think and make hard decisions and throw violence in together with that.
Yeah.
Now you throw violence in with that when lives are at stake and on the line. Man, who wants to do that? Give it to the government.
Yeah. No. Yeah, that's exactly something I was going to say. I think it goes right into that people still want to, at the end of the day, defer to authority to solve problems, right? And it all goes back to they haven't really had that manhood, that rites of passage aspect where you realize, okay, I'm a competent man and I'm only responsible for myself. At the end of the day, I can't ask Big Daddy government or these people, to make all those problems for me. At the end of the day, you do got to be responsible for your own decisions and your own beliefs and taking action on those, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's something that's been very much frowned upon, especially out here in the UK, where the government is the nanny state. We are basically living in the nanny state out here. They're trying to bubble wrap the entire world with absolute insanity. And there is no culture out here, and I think in Europe in general, it's kind of dying as a whole. The culture of responsibility, taking ownership of your life, and living with the consequences. Nobody wants to live with the consequences.
Sorry, but that's the gun.
Exactly.
In terms of the gun in the UK, it's the perfect example.
I would agree.
We don't trust ourselves, and the government doesn't trust you with that responsibility. Exactly. I'll give you a story from Birmingham. I was living in Birmingham at one point, And those like it was the I don't know what the hell was going on. Birmingham's a special place, man. So,
Yeah,
so
that's a good way to put it.
those drunks fighting in my front yard, and there was dogs fighting in my backyard. And I was like, okay, what the hell's going on here? So I called the cops. I'm like, if I had a gun, although I wouldn't go out brandishing it, I would go outside armed and deal with the situations because it was really close to my front door. I called the cops. They send 2 police officers over. I opened the door. There's these 2 mini women, that
as the cops.
Yeah, actually quite hot. I'm like, I opened the door. I'm looking at them. I'm like, here you are. I was like, half my size and weight, and I'm sort of looking around. I'm like, y'all don't have guns.
Anyone else?
And they're looking at me like why would we have guns? I'm like, and I mean, I just said it exasperated. I didn't even say it like on purpose out loud. I said, no, I got more people to protect.
Yeah,
Exactly.
It's give me the responsibility of myself and my safety and my family. Let me handle that. I don't need you guys. Just let me have my gun.
I agree. I mean, the one experience I did have is when I did go to, I was in Kansas. So I spent like 6 months out in Kansas.
I'm sorry for your loss.
Yeah. I was like dead smack in the center of the United States in a place called Great Bend. And there is a guy out there that I knew. He should have been in Texas, really and truly. He was destined to be in Texas. He had a full arsenal. He had a safe with, 24 guns, shotguns, homemade explode. You know the type, right?
Yeah, Kansas and Missouri are like the geographically northernmost southern states.
Right, exactly. And, I was telling him, look, I in Trinidad and Tobago, it's the same kind of UK laws. We don't have guns out there and stuff like that. So I was telling him that, and he's like, do you want to go shooting? And I was like, hell yeah. So he took me out to this spot, and we went through everything from a revolver, a shotgun. He even gave me his AR-15.
Nice.
Had a blast. I think somewhere I have the can that I actually shot through and stuff. He's like, you're a natural, man. But it was absolutely fantastic experience. And I said when I get to the UK, I would explore getting a firearm. And I was discussing that with a friend of mine out here. He said, you do not go into any police station or anything like that and discuss a firearm. They will arrest you on the spot. You have to join a club and say the only reason you want a firearm is because you want to go pigeon shooting, like shooting for food or for sport. If you say anything else, that's an assault weapon. You are buying a weapon for the intent to cause harm to others. They will arrest you, even if you're just asking the question. That is the level of insanity. I think the only place that may not be the case is Northern Ireland because of the troubles. I think in Northern Ireland, you can have a personal firearm. But the rest of the country, it is insane.
Yeah. Laws against intent are the dumbest thing I've ever heard in my life.
Yeah, it's thought crime. It's thought crime at that.
It's so dumb.
That's just mad.
Yeah. I mean, a friend of mine, she was, in a rather precarious situation. She had a baseball bat, and she used that to defend herself. And she had to go into the court and basically explain why she had a baseball bat in her house, and she's like, I like to play baseball. If she'd said anything else,
trouble.
She was gone. She was going to be locked up for that.
Germany, Germany had this moment. Germany's a hunting country. They have a hunting culture here.
Yeah.
And there was a time when it became unpopular to hunt. And, they had protests. They had the people out bothering the hunters, doing their stupid horn thing while the guys are doing their line drives and whatnot. And now, this was about 2 decades ago. Now Germany has a extreme and a severe pig problem, because so many people gave up the concept of actually going into hunting. And so now they have a pig problem. I think everybody saw that video recently where the pig swam to this island, then grabbed the guy's bag with his clothes in it, ran off, and the naked German guys chasing the pig. Yes. It's gotten crazy out here. And this is what happens. Just coming back to the topic, when we get rid of our nature, as people, we are hunter-gatherers, tribalists. We're all of this mixed together, and we need this. And we're part of the balance in this ecosystem. And
we have tamed it. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, exactly. And it has to be there.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting because people, especially if they don't have any history with violence or conflict, they automatically assume all violence is aggression. They don't never see violence as defensive at all. Right? So all those people that want to abolish violence or talk about toxic masculinity, they just assume all violence is, you're just out to take people's lunch boxes, right? Yeah. But really, you need just as much violence, if not more, to protect your lunchbox from others. right?
They better hope our enemies don't feel or feel the same way that they do.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
we know they don't.
The barbarians at the gates.
I don't think the Chinese are having these discussions.
No. In fact, they're doing the complete opposite. They're really trying to train their men to be strong and this nationalist ideal, and they're not falling for all of this propaganda and stuff out in China.
Yep. So
I mean, I was having the conversation with a friend of mine in Trinidad and Tobago, and there's as we know in Venezuela, there's a bit of a humanitarian crisis that's going on. And a lot of Venezuelans are coming to Trinidad because, they can buy food and toilet paper and these other things. And for the first time, Trinidad has basically had to deal with this first influx of refugees. And they've never had to consider defending a border. They've never had to consider doing any of these other types of things. But these guys are coming in. Some of them are, not all of them are bad. Some of them are really desperate. But it's changing the entire culture. Suddenly, the newspaper is in both Spanish and English. They've never had to deal with that before. You have to go in some places, they only speak Spanish.
Oh, wow.
So it's quite a culture shock for a lot of the Trinidadians out there. And for the first time, they're kind of like, we actually have to defend this country. We actually have to get the Coast Guard out there, and we can't just let everybody come into the place. And a lot of people who've, open borders and all this, they've never had to deal with these realities, that sometimes you do have to stand your ground and defend your borders,
Mm-hmm. Oh, I just wanted to point out, I did put the StreamYard link in the chat. So people watching or listening live, feel free to click on that and you can come in, ask AbuAmerican a question, ask the panel a question, anything you want. So, we'll entertain all questions no matter how silly. Or at least I will. I don't know about you guys, but
I'm game.
I love weird-ass questions.
Always fun. Always
You
fun.
should see my inbox on Twitter. Jeez.
But maybe we could discuss a little bit. I know, Abu, you've got kids now.
Yes.
Do you want to maybe talk a little bit about how you're instilling those values with your kids?
It's required. I mean, my family is our family were people were actually like escaped slaves that went up to North Virginia. So they were escaped slaves, and then they went back and they fought, against the South. And so since that time, we've had like basically a tradition in our family that every generation, a man has to serve militarily, because we are not going back into slavery. So we need a man in the family that can military train other members of the family so that we can defend our freedom, even if we have to die with it. So it's just, that's how it has to be. So right now, that still stands. And I have two sons, both in the military. One's a Ranger. He's in Afghanistan right now. The other one, he's still going through training, but they're both special operations. So
Fantastic.
yeah, both are coming back next year, hopefully. Because we just want the training, we want the experience, and that's it. Absolutely. So for me, that is the mentality that we instill into. Now this is just per generation. That two sons went in. That's fine. No one else has to do it. Basically, all my younger kids, they're free of it, because hopefully my sons will live long ages, and if anything pops off, they're going to be able to not only defend but train the smaller brothers and sisters. But if they choose to go in the military, then that's just great. We just got more. But next generation, that idea and that concept has to be instilled into that family member also. And I also teach them discipline. So this is something that has to be in my family, from an early age on. They have to understand you will, be martial in one way or another. And there is a chain of authority with me at the top, your brothers who are trained next, because they not only did they learn the military training, they learned how to make proper, like basically ladder link decisions, through the military. And so you need to follow them. And so this is like the culture that the family's been in for quite some time. It's been working well. So to me, it's like it's a very military type tribal mentality that, you have to put into them. My sons, the ones that, right now they're like 16 and 18. They train, striking with me up here. I've got like a bag system and everything I put up in the back over there. I got a bunch of training equipment. They come up, about twice a week, and we do some training up there. So it's just the mentality of that, violence is always an option. It may not be, your first, go-to in your bag of solutions, but
sure, it's
definitely like, that mentality stays there at all time. And they understand by the training that I'm quite dangerous, so I'm always at the top of the food chain.
More respect.
I didn't know you knew that.
There's a lot you don't know.
Who are you calling master? You know, like, my little kung fu
Silver fox.
mustache, you know.
Oh yeah.
So that's how I deal with it in terms of my children. You know, we have that mentality of tribalism. You know, with chain of command.
That does remind me though, and this is something that I see a lot in the red pillow sphere, whatever we want to call it, where you see a lot of people promoting lifting, right? Always go make muscles, always go dead weight, deadlift and squat and bench and do all of these lifting exercises. But not a lot of people talk about the importance of learning combat sports, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, I wonder if there's any way we could shift the culture to instead of do you even lift, bro? It's do you even fight, bro?
I mean, it doesn't make sense. You know, what's power without control? You know, you put a Ferrari engine inside of an old Volkswagen Beetle. You're not going to be able to control that thing. There's just no power. Your power is useless if you can't, operatively put it into a combat use. I lift, but it only what do you call it? Enhances my combat skills. It doesn't hinder it. That's why actually when I lift, I don't do a lot of bicep curls or anything like that, really heavy bicep, because your bicep slows down your striking. Exactly. So for me, if you're going to lift, it has to be there to assist your combat skills. Being big alone isn't enough. I think anybody who does jiu-jitsu knows that. You see that big lunkhead guy. I don't know, I call them lunkheads, but the big muscular guys, they come in, they think they're going to just grab people and throw them around like the weights in the gym. And, you can put the 16-year-old girl on him in the corner, that 16-year-old purple belt, and she's going to eat his lunch. Yeah,
exactly.
So she's going to drink your milkshake.
Exactly.
Drink it up.
Yeah, the lifting culture it's I understand the establishing a mentality and habits and whatnot that are good for your health. I understand that, but at the end of the day, when it comes down to combat, it's kind of sometimes it hinders you. There's certain exercises I just don't do because it makes you inflexible, and it can really mess you up. You need like insane cardio the more muscles you have. Your cardio has to be insane, and so it can hinder you.
Yeah, and that's something I care a lot about. It's not just fitness for fitness sake, but functional fitness. Like, how am I going to use this in the real world, right? And so combat sports, you not only get the functional fitness, you also get the skill set that helps you make you more competent overall in your life, right?
Absolutely.
And because, you're just kind of talking about it, but I've known a lot of guys that look like, magazine covers, but they are cowards.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Because they've never had to be in that environment,
Yeah. Some guys are getting by just on like looking big, and that saves them until you run across that guy who's not afraid of the big looking guy,
Yeah.
And then what are you going to do?
Yeah.
I mean, you see that a lot in Europe and stuff like where I am in the valleys. I'm presently in Wales. There's all the juice heads are out here, right? You got these kids and stuff like that. They're pinning themselves with tests and all sorts of nonsense. So they got the size. But when I meet them in a social situation, they're completely inept in terms of even just the social dynamics. Yeah. I'm not a big guy. I'm like 5'7", and I completely control the room. Or like I completely just I could handle the entire situation. And a lot of these guys are kind of cowering in the back. Like it's like, bro, you're like twice my size. Like what is wrong with you?
Yeah.
But they have no foundation of any of these things. It's all aesthetics. It's just looks,
Yeah, I was in Frankfurt. I was going to see this girl, and I don't know the roads in Frankfurt because it's not my town. So I cut this guy off on accident. I park like 100 meters ahead of him. I wouldn't even cut him off if I'd known. I just didn't know the roads. I was like, let me just get ahead and this, that, the other. Yeah. So I'm parking my car to get out of the car, and he yells from the window, stops, and is like, "Hey, this bad driving." This, that. I say, "Yeah, sorry, I'm not from here." I was like, this, that, the other, whatever else. I'm being polite and client, and just like, and just. Of course, like we were saying earlier, you give some people room and they mistake your kindness for weakness, and so they push harder, And so I made the mistake of like semi-apologizing, and then he went SJW on me and wanted to try and eat my lunch, And he was like, "Yeah, well, that's really dangerous. That's really dangerous for you." And then I just, I stopped and I put my keys on top of the car. I said, and I started walking towards the street. I said, "All right, get out of your car and show me how dangerous it is for me. Go on, get out of the car. I want to see how badass you are, because you're really talking now." And he just drove off. I was like, and I was like, what the hell? I was like, but there's a big dude inside the car. And I told him, I said, "Get out of the car and show me how dangerous it is for me to drive like this. Come on, show me. Come on." I said, "Because you talking like you're going to do something." Yeah. Drove off like crazy fast, terrified. Guys aren't ready for that. He thought that, I'm sitting inside here, my biceps poking out of the steering wheel in front of me,
Yeah.
and he's going to be scared. And I'm like, no, I'm not scared, dude. Get out of the car. Let's go. Yeah. It doesn't work. Not with everybody.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah,
I was going to choke him out too. I was going to put him to sleep.
You were ready for him.
I was like, this guy I'm choking to sleep.
exactly. Yeah, it's those people that care so much about aesthetics. They're sacrificing functionality and competence, right? Because martial arts and combat in general is so much more than just being able to fight someone, right? There's so much more involved in that you learn about yourself, like your own limits and your own potential. You learn about like consequences of actions, like we were talking about before. You know what I mean? And it kind of just bases you all around, both like emotionally and mentally, and not just like the physicality is important. But I think there's so much more you learn through violence than you wouldn't otherwise, right?
Agreed.
Indeed.
Agreed. The discipline, especially. Yeah.
Yep. All right. Well, yeah, we've come to the hour and a half mark. This is usually when we start doing some closing thoughts and all that. So AbuAmerican, do your thing. What do you got coming up for you? Pitch your stuff. What's going on?
In terms of like, this topic in specific, I have the book, The Mad Monkey. I don't have a copy here. I actually gave away my last copy, signed copy. I talk about violence, my experience in life with violence, and the lessons I learned from it, actually. And that was the entire point of the book. I didn't really go into spirituality into it because back then I wasn't really a spiritual person. But if you're interested, go ahead and check it out. It's called The Mad Monkey by AbuAmerican Little. In terms of personal projects, whatever I'm working on, it's all like stuff related to having multiple wives. It's off topic, so. But,
I don't know. There could be some violence.
Great.
Yeah.
Awesome.
But yeah, guys, don't be afraid. And don't be afraid to be, that masculinity at some point, whether it's going to be societally on a personal level, on the macro or the micro, your masculinity is going to be needed. It's going to be absolutely in demand. Don't shy away from it, guys. Don't be afraid of it. Don't be ashamed of it. It's who and what we are. There's a reason why we produce this testosterone, and it makes us what we are as men. Don't be afraid of it. Learn to control it, learn to regulate it, learn to harness it through a combat sport, and then learn how to use it responsibly that benefits yourself, your tribe, your people, when it's most needed. But don't ever be ashamed of it, ever. Guys, don't ever be ashamed of it. That's my closing point.
Oh yeah, one more question for you, AbuAmerican.
Oh, absolutely.
I think we went down some very interesting tangents, but I totally forgot to do. It's like, what would you say to a guy who calls himself spiritual but also says pacifism is required to be spiritual? What would you say to a guy who says pacifism is masculine or spiritual?
I would say personally, I'd say to the guys, like, don't try and make your inability or your cowardice into a virtue. That's what I tell them. I was like, you're trying to make your inability, be it internally, from not having heart, or physically, your lack of preparation in terms of learning combat sport, you're trying to make that into a virtue, and I don't think that's good.
Amen.
That's what I would tell them.
Awesome. All right, Amos, what's your final thoughts here? What's going on?
Excuse me, just to, I guess, as a final thought, but also to kind of tie in what AbuAmerican was just saying. Even among a lot of the religions that people tend to perceive as the most peaceful, like Buddhism, they have Shaolin monks are Buddhists. They have, in order to be properly certified and to go through the entire process of becoming an actual master, that it requires a level of understanding of Buddhism and the spiritual principles, where they see, like, the ultimate enemy is yourself, which is a pretty consistent message across a lot of spiritual beliefs. But also they understand that violence is sort of like it's a necessity. It's not but it's not something you go after first. So it's interesting that you look at it like Jesus told the disciples to carry swords. Buddhists learn how to, handle a multitude of weapons. What is it? Sikhs have, the 5 Ks that they have?
Mm-hmm.
One of those being a knife. Some of them I think even carry. Is one of the Ks a sword?
I don't know, but I know they have like a combat system and they carry knives. Even the Hindus have.
Yeah,
all the time,
and then AbuAmerican was talking about necessity, the violence within Islam, and that's a funny word too. Violence has this whole different meaning in society, even among us talking about it in sort of this pragmatic sense of understanding that it's necessary. You say violence, and you immediately think, you kind of get this feeling, or even just this image of aggression or hurting someone, when in reality, violence is both initiating like a fight or defending yourself against an aggressor. Yeah, there's even violence in, we talked about kind of like civilization to be where it is. There's violence involved, even if it's not between people. Digging a hole is violence against the dirt,
the ground.
It technically is.
Screw you, earthworms! This is my house.
Yeah, so no one
It's
really
true.
thinks of that. We don't think of it in a broad term, and I think that's kind of the problem with when you talk about violence. So you say, here we are with the show titled "Spirituality and Violence," and people are like, oh, they're talking about like, getting, fighting people in the name of God or anything. It's like, no, it's about sort of this understanding of this more holistic, I guess, view of like humanity, to understand that we're spiritual, but we're still humans.
Correct.
And I think our spirituality needs to reflect that. It's not just, oh, we're so enlightened and we're so, free from violence, therefore violence has no place. Totally does. I mean, even in like any realistic depiction of like humanity somewhere down the line in the future still have aspects of violence. I like talking about Star Trek. They're still getting into wars and fights in Star Trek.
They still have laser guns on that ship. Just saying.
Yeah, they're still
use them.
They're still learning how to like fight aliens, and they're pretty good at it. Like, the main characters are pretty good at fighting like warriors, like the Klingons and all this, because they have an understanding that violence is still necessary.
It's something that's going to be respected and never go away. The capacity for violence in a man.
Yeah,
even if he doesn't use it, we will always respect that. It's just how it is. It's what we are. Embrace it, guys.
All right, Brooke. What's your final thoughts?
I echo everybody's sentiments. I definitely agree that we cannot grow as an individual, as a species, unless there's struggle. Right? That's how you get better. You've got to have something to press against to get stronger. You got to press against, be in an uncomfortable position. If you want to learn something, you got to admit you don't know it. The history of mankind is a history of violence and struggle, and it's something that we can't shy away from. And I love the message that Abu puts out there. It is part of our masculinity. This does fall on our shoulders tremendously. It's something we've kind of shirked as a society and we've kind of pushed off, but we need to embrace, definitely in a healthy way. And it's just understanding that this is part of this is how we grow. This is how we press against nature, how we press against science, how we press against philosophy. And we struggle to make this world a better place that, for us and our generations to come. And it's a lot of responsibility. Not everybody wants to have that on their shoulders, but we need a select few to do it. So I'm glad that, everybody here is kind of in tune with that message. So fantastic.
Awesome. Yeah, my quick final thought is, we kind of, the whole phrase, good times create weak men create, good times create weak men create hard times create strong men create good times. To me, I think it's pretty obvious we're in an easy times makes weak men, right?
Yes.
Because there is, like Brooke was saying, like, we thrive on struggle, but honestly, there isn't a whole lot around us now. And the reason we got there is because we had strong men who were able to use violence to get where we are and to protect where we are, right? There's no such thing as living in a bubble without having a weapon, right? To protect that bubble. So, we have a giant military budget for a reason, because other countries also have a big military budget.
Correct.
Right? So many people want the pacifistic, communist, everybody sings Kumbaya and gets along. That only lasts as long until somebody wants what you have. Right?
Exactly.
And so, there's no peace and love without protecting what you already have. Right? And so, and that's on the macro scale. On the micro scale, as the individual, like if you want to grow as a man, if you want to, learn more about yourself and others, feel more confident in literally every area of life, learn some combat sports, learn some basic self-defense training, and your mindset will skyrocket, right? A friend of the show and a friend of most of ours here is Rich Cooper, and he's recently started Krav Maga, I think about 6 months ago, and he's talked a lot about how that's changed his life and changed his mindset as well. Even from a couple months of that is going to do wonders in your life, right? That feeling that that you can pretty much handle any average Joe on the street, right? The whole world isn't a bunch of Conor McGregors walking around, right? It's just
Mostly not.
If anything, it's mostly a bunch of the soy boy aspect of people who've never had to be involved, and the fact that you're just one rung above that, even with a couple months of training in really any combat sport that's been proven, right? Yeah. It's going to change your whole outlook and mindset on life. So definitely recommend on the micro scale, get involved with that, change your mindset, learn to be more competent in environments and around other men. So, yeah. And pacifism is not spirituality. It is a excuse, really, at the end of the day. All right. Well, let's call that a show. I think it went really well. Thank you, AbuAmerican, for coming in. You definitely brought some valuable insights.
Sorry for getting late, man.
And you got a book on it, man. Yeah. No worries about the lateness. It is what it is. All right, man. All right. We are signing off.
Whoa, did he just...
I thought that was me again. I was like, did I just drop out at the end of the
show?
Uh-oh, because he's the one who has to turn off the stream.
Yeah, he's got the...